The early morning sun had barely peeked through the windows of the FBI field office when Marcus Johnson walked through the security checkpoint at AM. Now, at 34 years, he carried himself with the confidence of a seasoned agent and greeted the security personnel with his usual warm smile. Marcus went straight to the briefing room. His polished dress shoes clicked on the marble floor. Today wasn't going to be the suit and tie kind of day. Instead, he carried a duffel bag containing casual clothes that would help him fit in with the crowds at Central Station. Morning Johnson called out his supervisor, Special Agent Sarah Thompson, as she entered the room with a stack of files ready for today's operation. Marcus nodded, pulling out his notebook. The briefing room slowly filled with other agents, but Marcus remained focused on reviewing his notes from the past week. The FBI had received credible intelligence about potential threats to major transportation hubs and Central Station was at the top of their list. Right, people, let's get started. Thompson called up a map of Central Station on the big screen. We have reason to suspect that someone may be doing reconnaissance for a potential attack, Johnson said about the L on the ground today. Marcus listened intently as Thompson outlined his role. He would have to monitor suspicious activities, especially around the main concourse and baggage areas. His background in behavioral analysis made him perfect for this assignment. Remember, Thompson continued, we're looking for anyone taking photos of security cameras, timing security patrol routes, or showing unusual interest in structural points. After the briefing, Marcus changed into his civilian clothes. A plain blue t-shirt, black jeans, and comfortable walking shoes. He packed his specialized equipment into a regular-looking black backpack, a high-resolution mini-camera, communication devices, and his FBI credentials carefully hidden in a secret compartment. In the locker room, his partner of 3 years, Agent Mike Shin, approached him. Hey, Marcus, that everything you need? Yeah, all set, Marcus replied, checking his watch. Standard 8-hour surveillance shift should be straightforward. Mike handed him an earpiece so small, it was just about invisible. Command Center will be monitoring your feed. Thompson wants constant communication. Marcus inserted the earpiece and tested it. Check, check. Command, do you copy? He said. Loud and clear. Johnson came Thompson's voice through the tiny speaker. Before leaving, Marcus stood in front of the mirror assessing his appearance. He saw what others would see. A tall, well-built black man in casual clothes with a backpack. He had done this dozens of times before, but something felt different today. Maybe it was the heightened alert level. Maybe it was just his instincts trying to tell him something. Hey, Mike called out, noticing his friend's hesitation. You good? Marcus shook off the feeling. Yeah, just doing my mental checklist. You know how it is. As he drove en route to Central Station, Marcus practiced his cover story in his head. If anyone asked, he was waiting for his sister's train that got delayed. It was simple, relatable, and gave him cause to move around the station. Marcus put his car in the long-term lot. He took one deep breath, and then his eyes moved to his phone. AM. The morning's rush would die down soon, making it easier to spot unusual behavior. He readjusted his backpack and walked towards the station's main entrance. The station was a huge structure of steel and glass, filled with the usual medley of commuters, tourists, and city workers. Marcus swam through the crowd with practiced ease as his trained eyes were already scanning for anything out of its place. Command, am entering the main concourse. Now he spoke softly into his hidden microphone. Copy that, Johnson. Remember, we got eyes on you through the station security feeds. Marcus found a spot near the information desk, pretending to check the arrival boards while observing the flow of people. Little did he know, in just a few hours this routine surveillance operation was about to become one of the most challenging days of his career. His watch showed AM. The operation had officially begun, and Marcus Johnson, one of the FBI's most experienced surveillance specialists, was ready for another day of protecting his city. However, fate had other plans, and the events that would unfold would not only test his training but also shine a spotlight on some of law enforcement's most pressing issues. The station's massive clock showed AM. As Marcus Johnson continued his observation with quiet vigilance, he had completed 3 routine walks through the terminal according to the pattern set out during his morning briefing. His black backpack containing sensitive FBI monitoring equipment hung comfortably upon his shoulders. "Command entering the East Wing now," Marcus whispered into his hidden microphone. He came to a stop near the coffee shop, feigning interest in his phone, watching two men studying the emergency exit signs with an avidness that raised his antennae. "Copy that, Johnson." Agent Thompson's voice cracked in his ear. "Anything new?" "Nothing much so far," he replied in hushed tones, "though there is some suspect activity around exit B3. Two males, both with green jackets, paying close attention to security features." Marcus ordered a coffee to maintain his cover and chose a table that gave him a clear view of the suspect men. While he was sitting, he noticed an elderly woman at the next table throwing concerned looks at him. She clutched her purse tighter and edged her chair away ever so slightly. Marcus had encountered such reactions before. It was. Even though being a black man in America came with certain, well, let's call them challenges, he was the one here protecting everybody. The suspicious men soon left, and Marcus took note of their descriptions in his phone, making it look like casual texting to any onlookers. Continuing on to his next vantage point, Marcus started to pick up snippets of hushed conversations. "That guy's been here for hours. He just keeps circling around with that backpack. We should call security." Marcus listened professionally, but his stomach couldn't help a twist of irony. He was here to protect these very people who now viewed him with suspicion. "Command, moving to the main concourse, he reported him getting some attention from civilians. Nothing unusual for this type of operation. Understood, Johnson. Maintain your cover. Station security has been notified of your presence." Or so they thought. Around noon, Marcus positioned himself near the ticket counters. He noticed a young woman in a red dress photographing the area with her phone. Following protocol, he observed her carefully, only to conclude she was just a tourist taking vacation pictures. The lunch rush brought a new wave of travelers, filling the station with hurried footsteps and rolling suitcases. Marcus used this time to change his observation point again, this time settling near the north entrance. A security guard passed by, giving Marcus a long, hard look. Marcus nodded, politely maintaining his calm demeanor while noting that this particular guard wasn't present during his morning briefing. Something had been missed in the communication chain. "Command, be advised," he whispered. "Local security seems aware of our operation and getting increased attention." Before Command could respond, Marcus noticed a group of three men who fit several suspicious behavior patterns. They were splitting up, each taking different positions around the main hall, appearing to time the security patrol's possible situation developing. Marcus reported, standing up to get a better view, three subjects showing coordinated movement patterns. "Request permission to move closer." "Permission granted." "Maintain distance. Do not engage." As Marcus changed position to better observe the suspects, he noticed more security guards entering the area. They were trying to be discreet, but their repeated glances in his direction told him something was wrong. A mother hurriedly pulled her children away as he passed, and a businessman in a suit quickly stepped into a shop. When Marcus walked by, the ripple effect of fear was spreading, created by nothing more than his presence and the paranoia of others. "Command, we may have a situation here," Marcus whispered, now genuinely concerned about the escalating tension. "I am getting a lot of attention from both civilians and security. Might have to abort if this continues." "Stay in position, Johnson. We need eyes on those three suspects. Local law enforcement has been notified of your presence." But, as Marcus would soon discover, something had gone terribly wrong with that notification. The next few minutes would transform this routine surveillance operation into a national incident that would force America to confront uncomfortable truths about law enforcement, racial profiling, and the disastrous consequence of lack of effective information sharing among the organizations. The time reached PM, and Marcus Johnson, still considering the suspects as targets, did not even fathom that he now was to be the chief target for a rapidly gathering SWAT team. The atmosphere inside the station began noticeably to shift with the time approaching. PM. Marcus Johnson remained in place, still following the three suspicious men, ignorant that he himself had become the subject of numerous concerned calls to local law enforcement. In the station security office, things were about to come to a head. Security Supervisor Tom Wilson perused the day's reports when his desk phone rang. The fifth call in 20 minutes. "Central Station Security," Wilson answered, his tone terse. "Sir, this is Karen Matthews from Platform 6. The caller was calling to report that man with the black backpack is back again. He's been circling the station for hours watching everybody. Several passengers are scared. Wilson rubbed his temples. Description: tall, black male, blue t-shirt, black backpack. He keeps talking to himself and writing things in his phone. What Wilson didn't know was that the FBI's notification of their operation had been misrouted due to a technical error in the communication system. The crucial email sat unread in a rarely checked general inbox while urgent decisions were being made based upon incomplete information. Meanwhile, at the local police department's Tactical Operations Center, SWAT Commander David Roberts was analyzing surveillance footage feed from cameras surrounding the station. The pictures showed Marcus moving around the station. His behavior triggered every indicator in their counterterrorism manual. "How long has this been going on?" Roberts asked. First report came in at about 10 a.m. Sir, his assistant said, we received over September 20th civilian complaints, and the subject's actions are matching multiple threat indicators. Roberts concluded call in the team full tactical response. If this is what we think it is, we cannot take any chances. Back at the station, Marcus was still set on his actual suspects. Command subjects are separating again. The one in the gray jacket is reaching towards the restricted area. Stay on him, Johnson. Thompson's voice grated in his ear. We might have something here. Marcus moved with caution through the crowd, keeping visual contact with his target. He noticed extra security guards materializing at several places around the station and thought that they were, like him, just responding to the same suspicious activity he was following. Unbeknownst to Marcus, SWAT teams were already arrayed throughout the station. Commander Roberts had mobilized a full tactical deployment, with teams stationed at all exits. In their command vehicle, they replayed for their team Marcus' movement profile from the last several hours. To them, his cautious surveillance was possible terrorist reconnaissance. All units in position. Suspect is still inside. Maintaining same behavior pattern. Roberts reached for his radio. Remember, this is a civilian area, crowded. We need this clean and fast. Wait for my signal. Inside the station, Marcus picked up that something was amiss. The crowd's behavior had suddenly changed. People were being quietly moved from his immediate area by security. His years of training sent alarm bells ringing in his mind. Command, something's not right, he whispered urgently. The station's being quietly evacuated around me. Request instant backup. Before Agent Thompson could respond, Marcus saw something that ran his blood cold, the reflection of tactical gear in a window. He saw several armed individuals move into position. Command, we have a grave situation, he whispered between struggling to keep his voice from rising. I've got what appears to be tactical units converging on my position. Please tell me these are our people. The silence on the other end of his comms device was deafening. Something had gone terribly wrong with the operations coordination. Marcus knew he had mere seconds to make a decision, one which his FBI training taught him not to make abrupt movements that may escalate the situation. Yet he also needed to try to stop what could be a terrible mistake. He moved very slowly and reached for his hidden FBI credentials, but before he could get to them, a booming voice filled the station. This is SWAT. Male with the black backpack. Get on the ground now. Hands where we can see them. The next few seconds would become a turning point in law enforcement history as an FBI agent's routine surveillance operation, but within a dramatic collision of worst fears. With hundreds of smartphone cameras watching a SWAT teams, the clock read PM and Central Station was about to become the unlikely epicenter of a national conversation about race, law enforcement, and the dangerous cost of assumptions. Time froze in Central Station at PM as the SWAT team commands echoed through the building. Marcus Johnson stood perfectly still, his mind racing through his FBI training for hostile situations. Around him, the remaining civilians scrambled for cover, many with phones raised to record what was unfolding. Get on the ground. This is your final warning. An Ong's voice boomed from a megaphone as Marcus could see multiple laser sights dancing across his chest. His earpiece crackled with Agent Thompson's urgent voice. Johnson, we're working to coordinate with the local law enforcement. Stay calm. Do just like they say on Get Down, Marcus loudly and clearly announced because his voice and body had been trained for high-risk situations. I'm slowly kneeling. Please don't shoot. I am a federal agent. Just keep your hands where we can see them. Do not reach for anything. The SWAT team, led by Commander Roberts, moved in with precision. Their black tactical gear and raised weapons created a sharp contrast to the bright interior of the station. Dozens of smartphones captured every moment. Their owners knew they were witnessing something significant. Kept his hands raised as he carefully knelt onto the cold floor. Years of training helped him keep composure even as his heart was racing. He could hear the heavy boots of the SWAT team from multiple directions. "My credentials are in my back pocket," Marcus said calmly but loudly. "I am an FBI agent conducting authorized surveillance. I am armed as part of my duties." Silence. See commanding one of the SWAT officers. Any movement will be considered a threat. Two SWAT team members approached Marcus from behind. Their weapons were trained on him. Grabbed his arms roughly, pulling them behind his back while another applied handcuffs. Cold metal clicked against his wrists as Marcus winced due to the tight grip. "The backpack could be explosive," someone shouted. "Get the bomb squad in here." More officers surrounded Marcus, a shield of protection around him. The bomb squad, on standby, moved forward with their protecting gear on. Marcus could only watch as they carefully took his backpack off of him, as if it contained a deadly weapon instead of standard FBI monitoring devices. "Listen to me." Marcus tried to repeat his voice even despite the circumstances. "Contact FBI Special Agent Sarah Thompson. She will vouch for my identity. This is a grave misunderstanding." Commander Roberts advanced on him, his weapon still raised. "You have been seen surveying suspiciously this station for hours." Several civilians reported threatening mannerisms. A young lady in the crowd yelled out, "I saw him. He's been here all day watching everyone," her voice trembling partially with fear, partially excitement as she recorded everything on her phone. "Because that's my job," Marcus replied calmly. "I'm an undercover FBI agent, tracking actual suspects who are probably getting away right now." The tension in the air was electric. More police officers arrived, filling the station with flashing lights. Newsbands were already pulling up outside, alerted by the numerous social media posts flooding the internet. "Check his back pocket," Marcus said again. "My FBI credentials are there. You're interfering with the federal investigation." A SWAT officer cautiously reached for Marcus' back pocket, reached for his wallet. The second he flipped it open and they saw the FBI badge inside. Everything changed. "Sir," the officer said, turning to Commander Roberts, his tone suddenly filled with doubt. "You need to see this." Roberts stepped forward and peered at the credentials. His face blanched white when he realized what they had done. The FBI badge and ID card were real. "Get someone from the FBI on the phone now," Roberts instructed, "and somebody get these cuffs off him." But it was too late. Hundreds of phones had recorded everything within minutes. Social media was going nuts with the videos entitled "SWAT Team Arrests Black FBI Agent," "Racial Profiling Gone Horribly Wrong," and "FBI Agent Mistaken for Terrorist." As the handcuffs were removed, Marcus slowly got to his feet, his professional demeanor intact despite the humiliation he had just been put through. He could already hear the news choppers starting to circle above the station. "Sir, we apologize for the misunderstanding," Commander Roberts began. The Marcus cut him off. "Save it for the press conference," he said quietly. "Because there will be one. Right now I need my backpack and equipment back. I still have a job to do. And you've just compromised a major federal investigation." The clock showed PM. And in just 15 minutes, a routine surveillance operation had transformed into what would become a national wake-up call about law enforcement communication and racial profiling in America. By PM, Central Station had become a three-ring circus. FBI Special Agent Sarah Thompson burst through the main entrance, her badge prominent in her hand, with a team of federal agents pouring in behind her. Several SWAT officers instinctively sidestepped away from her at the look on her face. Marcus Johnson sat quietly in an office away from the crowd of people, an ice pack pressed against his wrists where the handcuffs had left bruises. His normally immaculate light blue t-shirt was wrinkled from the takedown, but he seemed otherwise unruffled. His backpack and equipment had been returned to him after a thorough and unnecessary inspection by the bomb squad. Thompson called out as she entered the office. "Is everyone all right?" "I am good," Marcus replied professionally, though the tension in his jaw suggested otherwise. "But we lost our specs in all this chaos. 3 hours of surveillance wasted." Commander Roberts stood uncomfortably in the corner. His tactical gear now felt heavy with the weight of his mistake. The email confirming the FBI operation had finally been discovered, buried in the station's general inbox. "Let me get this straight," Thompson addressed Roberts, her voice sharp enough to cut steel. "You had written confirmation of our operation, you had an FBI agent's ID, you had multiple opportunities to verify his identity. Instead, you chose to mount a full tactical response based on what concerned citizens reporting a black man with a backpack." Roberts shifted uncomfortably. "Ma'am, we received multiple reports of suspicious behavior." "Suspicious behavior?" Thompson interrupted. "You mean doing his job, conducting authorized surveillance? The same kind of surveillance your own undercover officers do every day outside the office." Media crews had already gathered the videos of Marcus' arrest had gone viral with millions of views, and shares. Social media was exploding with hashtags and commentary, making the incident a national trending topic. Within hours, a young officer entered the office looking nervous. "Sir, the mayor is on the phone, and the FBI director wants a full briefing in an hour." Marcus checked his phone, now flooded with missed calls and messages. His family had seen the videos. His mother's text simply read, "Please call me. Tell me you're okay. We need to get ahead of this," Thompson said, pacing the room. "The press is already spinning their own narrative. We need a joint statement, and we need it now." A knock on the door interrupted them. A station security guard entered, looking embarrassed. "Agent Johnson, we found these." He handed over several surveillance photos of the actual suspects Marcus had been tracking. They left the station during the incident. Marcus examined the photos, frustration visible. "They were planning something. Now they know we were watching, and they're in the wind." The gravity of the situation settled over the room. Not only had racial profiling led to the wrongful detention of a federal agent, but it had compromised a serious investigation as well. "I want every scrap of intel we have on those suspects," Thompson ordered. "And, Commander Roberts, your team will provide full cooperation in tracking them down." Roberts nodded, said quickly, "Of course, anything you need." Marcus stood up, straightening his shirt. "We should focus on damage control first. This story is already out there. We need to shape the story before the story shaped itself." An FBI representative had arrived with the police department's public affairs unit. It huddled off in one corner, feverishly writing statements and planning news conferences. Thompson whispered, stepping closer to her agent. "You don't have to be part of the news conference. We can handle this." Marcus shook his head. "No, I need to be there. People need to see me stand up there in my FBI jacket. They need to see that this isn't just another incident to be swept under the rug. This needs to say something." Through the office window, they could see more news bands arriving. The story had grown beyond a simple case of mistaken identity. It became a bright light on the deeper issues haunting law enforcement: racial profiling, poor interagency communication, and dangerous consequences of unthoughtful assumptions. The time was p.m., and in 15 minutes Marcus Johnson would step in front of the cameras, not just as an FBI agent, but as a symbol of change that was long overdue in American law enforcement. "Let's do this," he said, reaching for his FBI jacket. "But first I need to call my mother." The press conference room at the Central Police Department was packed by PMC. Camera flashes lit the room like lightning as Marcus Johnson stepped up to the podium, now wearing his official FBI jacket. His mother had watched him on live television, and her words still rang in his head. "Make this count, baby. Make it mean something." FBI Special Agent Sarah Thompson stood to his left, while Commander Roberts and the police chief occupied the right side of the stage. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. "Good evening," Marcus began, his voice steady, professional. "Today, at approximately p.m., while carrying out an authorized FBI surveillance at Central Station, I was mistakenly detained by SWAT forces who believed I was a terrorist threat." The room erupted with questions, but Marcus raised his hand for silence. "What happened today goes beyond a simple miscommunication between agencies. It speaks to deeper issues that we as law enforcement professionals must address." In the back of the room, social media journalists were live streaming the entire conference. The #FBI Wild Black was already trending nationwide, accompanied by the viral videos of his apprehend the suspects I was tailing got away in the process. Marcus went on, "These were suspects exhibiting actual suspicious behavior, not just a guy caught breathing while black. This is a serious breach of security that has ramifications for national security." A female reporter, seated in the middle of the room, spoke up. "Agent Johnson, do you think you were profiled because of your race?" The room again went silent as Commander Roberts fidgeted and Thompson squeezed his arm next to Marcus. "What I believe," Marcus said tenderly, "is we have a job to get done when citizens see a black man with a backpack and automatically assume terrorist instead of law enforcement officer. When proper protocols are ignored because of rushed judgments. When an FBI agent can't do his job without being treated like a criminal, we have work to do." His words hit hard. Several reporters scribbled frantically in their notepads. The police chief stepped forward, reading from a prepared statement about reviewing protocols and improving interagency communication. The damage was done. The real story was Marcus Johnson, FBI agent whose humiliating incident was turned into a powerful message. After the news conference, Marcus sat in Thompson's office, watching the news coverage spread. His phone was growing hot in his pocket with messages of support from fellow agents across the country. Many shared similar experiences. "The director wants to see you tomorrow," Thompson said, entering with 2 cups of coffee. "This incident is becoming a catalyst for change, Johnson." "It shouldn't take something like this," Marcus replied, watching a news channel. "Replay the video of his arrest. We shouldn't need a federal agent being mistaken for a terrorist to talk about these issues." Meanwhile, at the police department, Commander Roberts faced his own internal investigation. The misrouted email about the FBI operation was just the tip of the iceberg. Questions were being raised about the quick escalation to SWAT involvement, the lack of verification procedures, and the underlying assumptions that led to the incident. Social media continued to explode with commentary. Civil rights 27.17. Organizations called for policy changes. Law enforcement agencies across the country began reviewing their own protocols for interagency communication and suspect identification. Marcus' phone rang again. It was his younger brother, a rookie police officer in another state. "Big bro, my entire department watched your press conference. You're changing things from 27.42, the inside." By p.m., the story had made international news. Messages poured in from law enforcement officers all over the world who could share similar experiences and called for change. What started as a mistaken arrest was becoming a movement. In her office, Thompson looked at the photos of the suspects that got away. "We'll find them, Johnson. But maybe today's incident, as unfortunate as it was, will lead to something even more important." Marcus nodded, turning off the news coverage on his phone. "Maybe. But first we need to make sure this never happens again. Not to me, and not to any other officer, not to any civilian." The time was p.m., and Central Station was operational again. The aftershocks of today's events had only just begun. Tomorrow would bring congressional inquiries, policy reviews, and a lot of hard conversations across every law enforcement agency in America. "Oh, and one more thing," Thompson said, slapping a folder onto Marcus' desk. "The director wants you to lead the new interagency training program. Time to turn this incident into real change." Marcus took the folder, knowing that his most important work was just beginning. 2 months after the Central Station incident, Marcus Johnson stood in front of a packed auditorium at the FBI Training Academy in Quantico. His audience included police chiefs, SWAT commanders, and federal agents from across the country. Communication isn't just about sending emails or making phone calls. Marcus began clicking to a slide showing the viral photos of his arrest. It's about breaking down walls between agencies, challenging our assumptions, and most importantly, we acknowledge our biases before they become mistakes like this. In the front row, Commander Roberts sat quietly. He had turned into an expected ally in Marcus' mission for change, using his own mistake as a teaching point in police training sessions. "When I was cuffed that day," Marcus continued, "I wasn't just an FBI agent being mistaken for a threat. I was every black man who's been judged by appearance rather than actions. But today we're here to change that narrative." The new interagency training program, dubbed Operation Clear Sight, and become Marcus' primary mission. The FBI director had given him all powers to change the way communication was practiced between the police departments. At a break, Sarah Thompson greeted Marcus with news. "Remember those suspects who got away during the incident? Denver PD just picked them up. Your initial suspicions were right. They were planning something big." Marcus nodded, relief and vindication mixed. "Any chance we can use that case in the training show how proper surveillance could have prevented both of their escape and my arrest?" "Already working on it," Thompson replied, handing him a file. The director wants it included in next week's congressional testimony. The changes weren't limited to training programs. Police departments nationwide had implemented new verification protocols. Every major station now had a direct hotline to federal agencies. The misrouted email that had contributed to Marcus' arrest would never happen again. In the station's break room, Marcus checked his phone. His mother had sent him a link to a news article titled "FBI Agents Wrongful Arrest Leads to Nationwide Police Reforms." Below it was a simple message: "Proud of you, son." Back in the auditorium, Marcus introduced the next speaker, a software engineer who had developed a new real-time communication app for law enforcement agencies. The app, inspired by Marcus' incident, allowed instant verification of undercover operatives across all agencies. "This isn't just about preventing mistakes," Marcus explained. As the engineer demonstrated the app, "it's about building trust between agencies, between officers, and most important, with our communities." Commander Roberts joined Marcus on stage to share his perspective. 2 months ago, I made a decision based on fear and assumptions. Today, I'm here to tell you how we're making sure that never happens again." The audience listened intently as Roberts detailed the new protocols his department had implemented. Every SWAT to employment now required triple verification. Racial bias training had been intensified. Community engagement programs have been expanded. During lunch, Marcus received an unexpected visitor. His younger brother, now wearing a detective's badge. "Your story changed things at my precinct, bro," he said. "Last week we had a situation similar to yours. But because of these new protocols, we handled it differently. No mistakes. No viral videos. Just good police work." Marcus smiled, remembering the fear in his mother's voice when she'd first seen the videos of his arrest. Now those same videos were being used to train officers across the country. Later that afternoon, Marcus led a practical exercise. Officers from several agencies had to collaborate to work their way through a staged crisis, putting the new policies and communication networks to the test in a real-world application. "Recall," Marcus said as the teams gathered, "every person you meet is someone's son, daughter, brother, or sister. Take the extra minute to check the extra call to confirm. Those minutes may save years of lost confidence." As the day Drew Thompson announced more good news: an additional appropriation for the training program had passed the Congressional Committee. Marcus' incident had created a catalyst for real change. "You've turned a negative into a positive," Thompson said, observing the officers training on the new communication systems. "That's not easy to do." Marcus watched as a young black officer successfully completed the training scenario, properly identifying an undercover agent without escalation. "No," he replied, "it's not easy, but it's necessary." The clock showed PM, and while the training day was ending, the impact of these changes was just beginning. Throughout police stations across America, new protocols were being put in place, new conversations were being had, and new understanding was being built. Change, Marcus had learned, didn't always come the way you expected. Sometimes it came through challenging moments that made everybody see it different. 1 year after the Central Station incident, Marcus Johnson sat in his new office at FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C. The wall behind his desk displayed framed pictures of his friends, his family, and his brothers in blue. Newspaper headlines chronicled the journey from that fateful day to now. His new title read Assistant Director of Interagency Relations and Training. The morning sun streamed through his window as he reviewed the latest statistics. Incidents of mistaken identity in law enforcement had dropped by 60% nationwide. The real-time verification app, now standard issue for all federal and local law enforcement, had prevented countless potential mistakes. His phone buzzed with a text from Commander Roberts. "Turn on the news." Marcus switched on his office TV to see a familiar scene playing out in Chicago, but with a different ending. A black undercover officer had been spotted by local SWAT, but the new protocols have prevented another Central Station incident. "This is how it's supposed to work," Marcus muttered to himself, a small smile playing on his lips. Sarah Thompson knocked on his door, entering with a thick folder. "The 1-year report is ready for the director." "It's ready," she said. "Want to hear the highlights?" Marcus nodded, leaning back in his chair. Over 10,000 officers trained. See new protocols. 23 potential incidents prevented by the verification system. 15 potentially saved by improved interagency communication. And the best part, 7 even other countries adopted our training program. His mother's framed quote hung on the wall. Make it mean something. Below it sat a photo of Marcus with his brother at his brother's recent promotion to captain, the youngest black police captain in his department's history. We've got a situation in Boston, Thompson continued. An undercover operation almost went wrong. The youth used your protocols. The officer sent me this. She handed him her phone showing a message that read, tell Agent Johnson his training saved my life today. Marcus stood up and walked to the window outside. A new class of FBI trainees was going through their morning exercises. Among them were faces of every color, each one required to complete the enhanced cultural awareness and interagency communication training he had developed. Remember those suspects from Central Station? Thompson asked. The trial starts next week. Their lawyer tried claiming entrapment, but your original surveillance notes held up in court. Even your arrest ended up strengthening the case. Just shows how dedicated our agents are. A knock at the door interrupted them. It was Marcus' assistant. Sir, the Attorney General is here for the briefing. Before heading to the meeting, Marcus checked his calendar. Tomorrow he would be speaking at Central Station, the same place where everything changed a year ago. But this time you'd be standing alongside Commander Roberts, introducing the station's new Joint Operations Center where federal and local law enforcement would work together under the new protocols. His phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from a young black FBI trainee. Your story inspired me to join the Bureau. Thank you for making it easier for those who follow. In the hall, Marcus passed a wall of screens showing real-time communication between agencies across the country. The system that grew from his incident now connected thousands of law enforcement officers, preventing misunderstandings and saving lives. Ready for tomorrow? Thompson asked as they walked to the Attorney General's office. More than ready, Marcus replied, but our work isn't done. That evening, as Marcus packed up his briefcase, he found an old photo of himself from that day at Central Station, and raised surrounded by SWAT team members. Next to it was a recent photo of him training those same SWAT officers. In the new protocols, his final meeting of the day was with a committee planning next year's law enforcement reforms. As he entered the conference room, he saw faces from every agency. FBI, local police, SWAT, community leaders, all working in cohesion. Let's get started, Marcus said, taking a seat at the head of the table. We've come a long way, but we still have a way to go. Every officer deserves to do their job without fear. Every citizen should get respect, and every mistake should be a lesson in making us better. The wall clock read PM, and as the sun set over Washington, Marcus Johnson looked around the table at the diverse group of law enforcement leaders. What had started as a frightening moment of mistaken identity had transformed into a movement for positive change. His mother's words echoed in his mind once more. Make it mean something. And he had. 1 year later, that meaning continued to grow, changing lives and transforming law enforcement. Meant one training session, one protocol, one mind at a time. The work wasn't finished, but the path forward was clear, and Marcus Johnson would keep walking it, paving the way for others to follow.